Hello everyone and welcome! In this video I'm going to be talking about how to make budget-friendly cards. In the past 2 years I did not buy any card making products like stamps, dies, stencils and so on, yet I've been making cards on a weekly basis and I'm not short on ideas. The thing is, not only I have to watch my budget even more I did before, shopping for card making products is my #1 thing I dislike about card making. For me, it's just a hassle because most of the time I have to shop abroad, which is quite expensive. In general, I do not enjoy online shopping because I do not trust the post office to do their job and deliver my stuff. So I try to avoid it as much as possible. But I love making cards. I did not want to give it up. I did not want to give up my YouTube channel or my blog. So I was looking for ways how to make cards without spending any money. Or at least too much money because I did buy cardstock and few little things. And I thought this topic would be a great idea for a video before I start with my Christmas card series. I have tips for those of you who have been crafting for a while, but also those of you who are just starting. So let's get to it. My first tip is quite obvious and it might be a little bit intimidating, but hear me out. My first tip is to make your cards completely from scratch, meaning drawing and painting yourself. It sounds quite scary and I'm with you, it's same for me. I always find it quite intimidating when I'm making my cards from scratch. The thing is, I'm not an artist or a graphic designer. I have never been into painting or drawing before. I don't even doodle. But I wanted to give it a try. I started in 2020 just to make cards with simple images. I would still call myself a beginner, maybe an advanced beginner. There are plenty of things that I can't paint. I'm just sticking with the simple things. I just knew I didn't want to spend any money on new card making products and this was quite an obvious option. And I have a whole playlist with cards that I made completely from scratch. There are more coming for this Christmas. I will leave the link to this playlist in the description below. To give you a few examples, of course you can use a coloring method of your choice. I prefer to use watercolors because that's something I'm comfortable with. Plus watercolors can be budget friendly. I also use very cheap watercolor cardstock, usually the Canson XL, but I also use the other coloring methods like acrylics, gouache, coloring pencils, ZigBrush markers and so on. There are cards that I made with just a black fine liner or a white gel pen. Like last year I used a white gel pen to just draw simple Christmas images. But let's get to those examples of what you can paint that is truly beginner friendly. So the first example is painting landscapes with mountains. This is very simple. All you need to do is to paint a sky and then the mountains. The mountains are pretty much wavy lines, you paint them in rows, and for each row you intensify the color, ending with the darkest shade of the color at the bottom or with black. You can paint in trees, you can paint in birds, you can mask off a sun, that's all up to you. Of course, I have a few videos on this channel where I painted mountains. I will leave the link to those in the description below. And also, this would be a great idea for Christmas cards. I made a Christmas cards last year where I painted the landscapes and I painted them in a circle so it looks like a Christmas decoration. Another simple thing to paint are fir trees. You start with a straight line and then you go with the dabbing motion, zigzag from side to side until you reach the bottom. There are other ways to paint it. This is just what I find easiest to do. And you can paint trees with the landscapes just as a black silhouette. 2 years ago I made a Christmas card with a row of trees in different shades of color. And then I added a clean water at the bottom. The color seeped to it and it looked really cool. This is something I found on Instagram or Pinterest and I thought it looked really cool. I tried it out and I think it looks really cool. Leaves is another thing that is very simple to paint. If you think about it, it's just line and raindrop shapes. Again, there are quite a few videos on my channel where I painted leaves. Not long ago I painted just a simple branch with multiple leaves. That was really fun to paint. I also painted a background with leaves, which was also fun to paint. I painted them in different shades, which was one of my examples for Mother's Day card. I also painted wreaths. Last year I painted an autumnal wreath with multiple colors. 2 years ago I painted a Christmas wreath. I might do it again this year with just a white gel pen or white coloring pencil. We'll see. For leaves I mainly use watercolors, but last year I made a background where I used coloring pencils. Coloring pencils are really great if you want to have some control, but then coloring with coloring pencils does take a little bit longer than with watercolors, at least for me. If you are painting leaves with watercolors, what I would recommend is getting a long bristle brush in the size 1 or 2. This helped me tremendously to paint those thin long lines. I am fascinated by watercolor artists who use a round brush to paint very thin lines. This is something I cannot do because my hand just shakes way too much. My last example of things that are easy to paint are certain flowers. Not all, there are plenty of flowers that are quite difficult to paint, but flowers with a round middle and petals that are in the teardrop, raindrop shape-like form, those are quite easy. Something like sunflowers or daisies and so on. It's easy to paint them from front. Myself, I still cannot paint them from an angle. This is something I would love to learn next year. Do you know what flower is easy to paint? Poinsettia. 2 years ago, I painted a poinsettia flower for Christmas cards and I loved it. I really could not believe that this is something I painted myself. I was truly shocked. I'm not sure if it is really good, but I like it. And let's finish the tip with this thing. The most important part is that you like it. That's what matters the most. Anything visual is pretty much in the eye of a beholder. But moving on to the next tip. If you are not into making your cards from scratch, there is another budget-friendly solution for that. And that solution is digital stamps. And all you need is an access to a printer. You do not have to have printer at home. If you have never heard of digital stamps are images that are outlines that you can print out and color. Official digital stamps, and I mean by official is images that are labeled as digital stamps, are much cheaper than physical stamps. I mean much cheaper. So where can you get digital stamps? First of all, some you can get over on my website. There are not that many because I just started a few months ago, but currently they are all free to download. The link is in the description. For Christmas, I might make a digital stamp with a poinsettia. I already drew it, I just need to add some foliage around it, so we'll see, keep an eye on it. But other than my website, on Etsy I saw a few shops that sell digital stamps. This is something worth checking out. There are also some stamp brands that sell digital stamps like Gerdersteiner Designs. They sell physical stamps but also stamps that are digital stamps. If you know about any other shops that sell digital stamps, let me know in the comments below. And of course, you can use any outline image, but here I would be careful not to steal other people's work. Websites that offer royalty-free images is the safest way to go. Pixabay.com is something I use. I found this poinsettia image on it, and I might be using it if I don't manage to finish my own poinsettia drawing. And how do you print? Obviously, it's better if you have a printer at home that prints on a thicker cardstock. I have a laser printer from Brother and it does print on a thicker cardstock like Canson Bristol. I haven't tried yet, but I'm sure it would print on Nino Solo White, but it doesn't print or it doesn't take a watercolor cardstock, at least not the Canson XL. So if I just want to color, either using pencil or something like ZigBrush markers, I would print on the Bristol cardstock and do my coloring. But if I want to watercolor, and this is something you would do if you do not have printer at home or your printer does not print on a thicker cardstock. What I do is I print the image on a printer paper, I cover the back with the lead of a pencil, I place that image onto a watercolor cardstock with the lead background down onto the watercolor cardstock, and then I trace the lines of the image using a pen or a pencil, which transfers onto the watercolor cardstock, and then I can start with coloring. You can do this with any type of cardstock, and then you can do either no line coloring or you can use a fine liner to go over the lines. But if you want to know how I exactly print, let me know in the comments. And this is my second tip, how to save money on card making. My last tip is for those of you who have been crafting for a while, and that is Search your stash and reuse your old products. Even if you are just starting, you can reuse one stamp set multiple times, create multiple designs before you put it away. I reuse my stamps all the time. I love reusing my old stamps, dies, stencils, you name it, especially now that I have all my stash back with me at home. Long story short, in 2020, me and my husband, we moved to Sweden. But first we wanted to travel across Sweden in our motorhome and look at some houses and maybe buy one or rent one. To be honest, I did not think it will happen, and while I did take quite a lot of crafty things with me, a lot of stuff stayed at home at our parents' house. But then the pandemic hit and we bought the house pretty much right away as we arrived, and then for the next 2 years we weren't able to pick up our stuff. But this year in spring we finally were able to get our stuff back, including my crafting stuff, and it's like Christmas came early. It's absolutely awesome. I've been going through my old stash and thinking, when can I use it? For example, all of my Halloween cards for this year were made with my old stamp sets. So check out your stash and see what you have. You bought those products for a reason. For example, stamp sets. There are so many things you can do with one stamp set. You can use different colors, you can use different coloring methods, you can do a different background, you can stamp a background or create a frame. There are really many things you can do with one stamp set. And you can also remake your old cards. This is another thing I really love to do. And because I have a new blog, nordicbee.weebly.com, and with those vertical videos that are now popular, I'm even more encouraged to go back and remake my old cards, which has been really a lot of fun. And how many of you bought a product, did not have the time to use it, and then you forgot about it? I have a few stamp sets like this, and one of them is a Christmas stamp set with a snow globe, and I'm hoping that I will be able to use it for this year's Christmas card series, and it's going to be a shaker card. Also, since I'm talking about old stash and reusing your old products, this is sort of a bonus tip, but when you see a card that you really like on YouTube, in a blog post or social media, and you like the overall look of the card, instead of buying the same stamp set and creating the same card design the card maker made, go through your stash and see if you can find something similar to create something that is more original. Or if the stamp set is too expensive for you, try finding something similar but cheaper. Actually, when I see other people's cards, I only take them as design inspiration. Most of the times I don't really care what stamp sets they used. I'm more interested in what coloring products they use, how did they color, background ideas, did they use any new techniques or new coloring products. And then I can recreate something similar with other stamp sets. For example, recently I saw a card that I really liked with a stamp set that is a frame with snowflakes. That company doesn't sell here in Sweden, and I thought I could technically use single snowflake stamps and create something similar. Or there was another card, I think it was from Nina Marie. She used an embossing folder and then used the Tim Holtz crayons. Well, I already have a snowflake embossing folder and I have some crayons, so I might try something similar like she did. All I want to say, if you like a card design but the products are outside of your budget, check out your stash or look for alternatives. You definitely can make something similar with the different products. So these are all my tips on how to save money on card making. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any more tips or if you have any other questions, just ask in the comments below. And if you would like to see all my cards that I created from scratch, you can check out the playlist here. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video where I'm starting with my Christmas cards.